Okay, so today we're going to learn a little bit about data visualization, and we're going to specifically do that using what is called a pivot table. So today we're going to learn how to construct a pivot table and some of the things that we can do with it. So first, as we're looking at our data here, we can see we start in column A and we go all the way to column X. So that's not too bad. That's 23 or 24 columns of data. If I look at rows though, we go down. We've got 51,291 rows of data. So there's a lot of data in this matrix. It's going to be kind of hard to look through this data, so we need a way to quickly take a look at things. And as we go along in this course, you'll see that sometimes we have to look at the data before we can sit there and know what data that we need to analyze. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do that via a pivot table. And so we're going to start with this first one. We want to analyze the quantity sold by a category and a subcategory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to insert. I'm going to insert a pivot table. Now, since I started here, there's only one cell with data in it, so it's wanting to default to all the data on this sheet. I actually don't want to do that. So let's go back to this one because I want to capture all this data. And so if I go pivot table here, notice that it's grabbing all the data on this worksheet that I'm on. So it orders everything from A1 to X 51,291, and we already looked at it, so we know that's all the data. But I do want to insert this into an existing worksheet. So remember, this little arrow is kind of a clicker box, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say drop it right there. And then I'm going to hit OK to create this pivot table based on this data. And so you notice, wow, that's really anticlimactic because it just drops, hey, I've got a pivot table here. But we've started the frame. And you'll notice over here on the right side, we've popped up the pivot table fields. And then there's a lot that we can do with this. So just quickly, these are all the fields. So these are all the headers from the data that we have. These are things that we can play with. And then I have 4 categories down here. I can put things along columns, rows, the little sigma sign here. So this allows us to manipulate values. And this is filters. This allows us to put filters in things. So what I'm going to do is let's start out with something simple because I want to analyze the quantity sold by category and subcategory. And these are headers that we have. I'm just going to click on categories. I'm going to drag it down to rows. And notice it pops up that we've got 3 categories: furniture, office supplies, and technology. I also want subcategories. Now, if I just would click on the X, and let's roll this back. If I just click on it, it's automatically going to drop it into rows anyway. I can move that to columns. I can use that to have it used as a filter. And actually, I'm not going to play with that now and stuff. But let's go category, subcategory. So we start out. So here's all our categories and our subcategories. So that's only really just giving us some labels, but now what I want to know is I want to know the quantity sold by each of those. So if I come down here and I look, one of my guys is quantity. I click on that. Now notice that it automatically throws it into the sum of the values. Yeah, I can move it over here, but that will just give me the pure number. Well, I want to sum them up. So if I have it over here, it's just going to give me the quantity itself. And so 1 bookcase, 2 bookcase, da-da-da. If I move it over here, it's the summation of the values. So this is the sum of the quantities. So some customers order 14 at a time, some order 1, or I can just throw this over here, and all bookcases over all 51,000 people is 8,310 bookcases. So this is a really handy way of looking at data and playing around with it. And some other things that we can do is if we go into value field settings, instead of the sum of the quantities, we can have it count. And it just gives us the count of all the instances of, bookcases come up 2,411 times regardless of the quantity. you can go the maximum. So the maximum bookcases sold at one point was 14. But there's a lot of different things that we can look at here and just different ways to see things. So this gives me basically what I asked for. I can analyze the quantity sold by category and subcategory. Sometimes just pure numbers isn't the biggest or most important thing for us. What if I want to know percentages instead of just pure numbers? I can come over here. If I right click on the numbers, I can see that I've got all of these different options. I can go show values as, and I got plenty of options here because I'm not doing any calculations on this right now aside from just summing them up. So let's say that I just want to know percentage-wise of the grand total. So grand total's in there, what is it, 178,000 or whatnot? So if I put it in percentage of the grand total, it automatically puts it as a percentage. And that's a little bit easier to look at now because I can see I had a lot of office supplies before. Well, 60% of everything I'm selling is office supplies, and that's made up of everything down through here. Now, if I was going to put this pivot table in a report or whatnot, one of the things that I would want to do is to change things up so that this doesn't say sum of the quantity at the top. I want it to actually say percentage or whatnot. If we go into value field settings, we can change it from sum of the quantity, and we can say percentage of grand total, hit OK, and that will change things for us. And so for the data, you can sit here, and obviously we've got the little plus and minus buttons. Oh, I did not mean to go back to that. We can shrink and show the data. Something else, if we go to report layout, we're showing it in compact form now. Put in an outline form, it kind of just stretches things out. So you've got the category and the subcategory, and if we had more things in there, we'd be able to add more and more spots. And we can insert a blank row after every item to make things look better. I can remove the blank rows, and so there's a lot of little formatting options you can play with. You can say, hey, let's shade the colors different, add banded rows if you need to look at it. So these are all little formulas that little options that you can play with in here.